This next woman, she's the type of person who's always giving everyone else the stage, but this time we're going to give it to her. She's the founder of the Women's March LA Foundation. Thank you so much for doing that. Put your hands together for Emiliana Guereca as Nadia Anjuman.
An abundant famine boils in my soul-fevered fields, and the strange waterless boiling startles the image in my poem of life. My name is Nadia Anjuman Harawi. I am a poet. This is my story. I was born on the 27th of December, 1980, in my city in northwestern Afghanistan called Herat. There I lived with my parents and 5 siblings. We had a comfortable life together. My parents were very supportive. I went to school and excelled in my studies. When I was 15, everything changed. The Taliban pushed in and occupied Herat. With them, they brought malice, violence, hate, and terror. Their reign in Herat began in 1995. Women were most adversely affected. The Taliban stripped away our rights, liberties, and dignity. I wasn't allowed to leave my home alone. The schools for girls were shut, closed. I was not allowed to be instructed. All of a sudden, I had no hope of an education or future. I initially despaired, feeling that there was no way to escape from this bleak situation. I should have known that evil could not stamp out hope. In defiance of the Taliban's restrictions, a group of women joined forces with a professor of the University of Herat named Muhammad Ali to form a secret school. Gathering under the pretense of learning how to sew, one of the few activities that the Taliban encouraged, women would discuss literature and hear lectures from the professors. The school was called the Golden Needle Sewing School. We met there 3 times a week. I joined when I was 16. Going to school under the Taliban's regime was very risky, and they frequently sent out religious police to make sure we remained subjugated to their extremist ideology. Everyone in the Golden Needle Sewing School faced the risk of being imprisoned, tortured, and even killed. As a precaution, some of the older women and their children play outside the schoolhouse while we met. Those children were our lookouts. Whenever they saw the religious police coming, they would warn us, and we would swap out our books with needlework. As wonderful as this literature circle was, however, I knew it could not compare to the sort of education I could get at a university. Wanting to push myself more, I approached the professor and asked him to give me private lessons in writing and literature. Under this guise, I began to flourish. I began to learn about classical forms of Eastern poetry and was exposed to poets who would come to influence the way I thought and wrote. I always knew I had a voice. These private lessons taught me how to speak. I knew I wanted to be a poet because I wanted beauty to give hope when hate and violence would otherwise breed despair. Stifling songs was my abuser's strongest skill, but I would not be silenced. I knew one day my hands will become weavers, and upon life's waterboards of a body, spin a gown with wheat and flowers. I kept at my lessons, honing my skills for 5 long years, until one day, when I was 21, the Taliban was expelled from Herat. The girls' schools were once again opened, and the universities began accepting women again. I was admitted to the literature department of Herat University. On the day I was admitted, I felt as though the entire world had been handed to me. My parents respected my talents, urged me to use it. I began studying at the university with particular emphasis on Farsi literature and language. While I was a student, I published my first book, Gul Dildi, Flower of a Smoke. I also met my husband, Farid Ahmad. He had a literature degree and was the head of the university library. My first book was a success. I began writing a second one. My husband, however, was not supportive of my talents. They say he thought my poetry brought shame to his family. Perhaps he was jealous. I don't know what motivated him to hate my happiness, but he did. One night when I was 24, he and I got into a big argument. I wanted to go out with my friends. He wanted me to stay home. When I resisted, he beat me. He beat me until I spit up blood. He beat me until I was on the floor. He beat me until I was no longer conscious. I did not wake up. 2 hours after I lost consciousness, he put me on a rickshaw and took me to the hospital. I was already dead. He would tell the police that I tried taking my life drinking poison, but they put him in prison. Months later, the Afghani court ruled that I had taken my own life. Farid was released. My father died from shock. Throughout my life, men tried to suppress me with violence, just as they suppressed so many innocent and talented women. I did not let them suppress me. Today, my voice is still among you in my poetry. I hope it would outlive them, outlive fear in the hearts of others, and outlive hate in the lives of many. My name is Nadia Anjuman, and this was my story.